Hey guys, here's a quick rundown of what John Lynch had to say at his press conference at the NFL Combine. Here we go. Just jump right into it because that's what we do here. Brock Purdy's contract, he brought it up, and that's what they're currently working on right now. They said they want to get it done. That John Lynch expressed how much he actually wants to keep Brock Purdy. He wants to be here for a very, very long time. However, there was a comment where he says there's no guarantee that it will get done. He said it quickly and just kind of like really fast. So I wonder if he was just making word salad. And then as he was talking about how great Brock Purdy is and how he wants to keep them and that they're currently working on his contract, he kind of just said that out loud because it felt like a passerby kind of comment more so than, but there's no guarantees. It wasn't like that. It was just really quick and in between. So take for that what you will, but I think it was just a simple, quick comment, really, to be honest with you. But Brock Purdy, they're working on the contract. Great news. Trent Williams. They were asked about Trent Williams. Well, he was asked about Trent Williams. He is set to return. He's excited for Trent Williams to return and expects a full go Trent Williams, and he's not going to retire. So we don't have to worry about that. However, the man is, I believe, 36, 37 years old. It's time to move on and try to find his replacement, which I think we can find in this draft. And then we could develop him into him being ready next year after that. Because there's going to be some tackles that are development tackles. And with those, you kind of expect them to start next year, not particularly this year. There's some tackles you work with. If not, get someone in the draft next year, trade for someone, do your thing. All I know is that Trent Williams is returning, and that's great news, and he's fully healthy, ready to go. His ankle's recovered. He's fine, and he's not retiring. Next up, they were asked about Deebo Samuel and his situation. Is there a chance that he's going to come back? Is it for sure that he's going to be gone? He wants out of here. It was expressed by John Lynch that, yes, he made it kind of relatively adamant that he wants out of here. He wants a fresh start and just to go somewhere else. And it turns out that John Lynch said his own words was, "We will honor that." So they are looking for trade suitors. However, he did kind of hint out where it's like, okay, if Deebo Samuel wants out, he has to meet us halfway. We had his agent go out, look for some teams that possibly want to trade for him. He says there's several teams around the league that actually do want to trade for him. Is that just him speaking so that he can get the word out? We don't know, but that's what he had to say, saying there's several teams interested in Deebo Samuel. As to diving into like the details or whatever of the conversation they had between John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and Deebo Samuel, he says we'll keep that in-house and not talk about it. So he didn't really get into that. All I know is that he said that he's going to honor his trade request and do what he can to get out of there. But he did kind of express the cap a couple times where he brought it up where it's like, you know, he is worth a lot of money. He's got a lot of money on the books. He brought it up, which I don't blame him. I mean, that's a lot of money to just cut and then just take, especially after giving him the contract last year, you know, him wanting guaranteed money at that point. I don't want to get too much into it, but I totally agree with what he's saying, where he's coming from with saying, hey, we gave him a lot of money and this is kind of bullshit, but hey, we'll honor it. We'll move on from him and whatever. And another thing, it's not like he's playing great or anything, right? He's relatively washed right now. So cutting him, the only thing that's negative about it is that cap hit. So hopefully there are actual trade suitors and we can trade them out off this team and we can move on with Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, etc. Next up, speaking of Brandon Ayuk, quote is, they were poking around, teams were poking around for Brandon Ayuk. And what John Lynch had to say was, we were just taking calls. You know, we take calls on everybody. We get calls all the time and we're just answering them. So it's nothing like actual dire. There's no real trade talks going on. It's just people calling about the situation because, I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, the man came off an injury. There's rumors of frustration or whatever. So when something like that comes out, team be like, hey, if there's real frustration with this guy, are you interested in getting rid of him? I can understand why teams possibly called, but the cap hit is just way too high this year and the next year after that. We just signed the guy to a shit ton of money, so he's not going anywhere. Brandon Ayuk's not going anywhere. It's just too big of a cap hit, and his value is super, super low right now coming off the injury of He completely obliterated his knee. The only thing that stood was the tendons in his knee. Ayuk's not expected to be back possibly week one. From practicing and all, it's going to start week one of the season, potentially into the season. It was that bad. He obliterated a lot more than just his ACLs, MCL, and then there was something else that he also tore up in there. So it's pretty bad for Brandon Ayuk, and his value is too low, and the cap hit is just way, way too high. So it's really just teams calling about it, just saying, hey, how do you feel about Brandon Ayuk? Getting a feel for it. So potentially maybe down next year or 2 years from now, they could be like, hey, how do you still feel about him? That's the situation with Ayuk. They're just taking calls about him. Next up was Dre Greenlaw. He did say they were working a way to keep him, that they might try to get something done before the start of the next season, new year, which is March. I could be wrong, but it's somewhere between March 10th, March 13th or something like that. But they are trying to work on a contract assigning him to a long-term deal. Hopefully they can keep him around. Hopefully Robert Saleh can be a good influence, like, hey man, stick around. We need you. We need you. We need you. But as we know, Dre Greenlaw kind of wants to run his own ship. He wants to be the number one guy. And Fred Warner on our team is the number one guy. So it wouldn't be Dre Greenlaw. I would love Dre Greenlaw back. However, he is injury prone. So I can understand why they possibly want to move on from him, because if he gets hurt and we're relying on him and he's no longer available, we're kind of screwed. Availability is the best ability, no matter how good you are. And that's kind of the problem with Dre Greenlaw. But they want to bring him back before the new season where everyone can sign and free agency, et cetera. I have heard that they want Greenlaw to test the market first. So that could be a thing. But according to John Lynch, they're working on a way right now to keep Dre Greenlaw, which is good news for everyone who's been wanting to keep Dre Greenlaw, because I know there's a few of you guys out there like, man, this defense desperately needs him. So I understand where a lot of people are coming from with that. Next up, he talked about George Kittle with a contract extension. I know a lot of people were also worried about that one as well. Great news. They're working on a contract extension right now as we speak. However, I kind of contradict myself here when I say this, but they're kind of putting it on the back burner right now because they have bigger issues, such as Brock Purdy's contract and how they want to sign him first and kind of working on him, and other things that requires attention. Like if they want to sign Dre Greenlaw and him becoming an upcoming free agent, they're going to need to focus on that. They have a lot more. Trading Deebo is probably a higher priority. I don't expect George Kittle to get an extension until like June or July, something like that, when they truly actually dive into a potential contract extension. Because he's not going anywhere. He's still going to be part of this team, George Kittle. He's not going anywhere, right? This team tends to extend players in June or July. Players that are part of the team aren't like looking. It's not like the same situation with like Brock Purdy, where he's like he wants a contract extension now, or whatever. It's more of like a restructure so that George Kittle gets more money and more guaranteed money in a couple of years down the road. So things like that, they usually do around like June or July for veterans like that. But yeah, George Kittle will be signed. I'm very confident they're keeping him around. He's a great culture guy. He's phenomenal on the field, off the field. He's everything that you want in a player, in a teammate. Expect George Kittle to return and get that contract extension. My prediction, it won't be until June and July, especially with all these things they need to address with Deebo, Brock Purdy, Dre Greenlaw, free agency, draft, etc. It's just on the back burner right now. They are working on a contract right now, extension for George Kittle. One last fun little tidbit that I want to bring up that they talked about was the last question of the interview, which was the tush push. John Lynch was like, I'm kind of being two-faced here, because he says one thing he said about the tush push was, if you don't like it, then stop it. That was the thing he said about the tush push. He also said was, there's the concern of injury. There's, how players are going to end up getting desperate and do desperate things and end up getting hurt. It's kind of like what we saw against the Commanders and the Eagles, where like the player just kept hopping over to stop it because they couldn't stop it. It kind of seemed to me that he wanted it gone. Like regardless of how his philosophy is of, if you don't like it, stop it. You could tell though in his second part of that conversation that it can get people hurt, and make players desperate to do things. It's not he said it's not an entertaining play whatsoever. Kind of takes away from the game. Things of that nature that I've noticed a lot of other head coaches and GMs have been preaching at the NFL Combine recently. And they've been saying the same thing verbatim. It sounds to me when they had their meeting about this, they all got on board with what the narrative is about the tush push, the negative narrative. However, Nick Sirianni was like, man, we worked hard on that play. We worked hard to make it great. It sounds to me Nick Sirianni is preparing to lose that play because he was not happy talking about the tush push possibly being banned. Because there was one conversation before the meeting where Nick Sirianni was like, yeah, I like the play. I think it's a great play. And he was rather chill. In an interview recently, he was pissed. He was furious. So it sounds to me that this tush push might potentially be banned in the end, just based on those vibes. So that's everything. That's the lowdown of everything that was said by John Lynch at the press conference. From Brock Purdy, Trent Williams, Deebo, Ayuk, tush push, Greenlaw, George Kittle, all that, all important good stuff. Let me know what you guys think about everything that was said, the rundown. I totally would read those. I want to read your guys' comments, see what you guys have to say. Like the video, of course, so that way this conversation can be spread out more. And I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, man, because every single like makes my 49ers heart grow from here to here. All love, fam. I'll see you next video. Bang, bang, down a gang.